so you can see the towns. By the way, do not follow Kira XD here. I just made the Twitter account for tier maker, so don't follow me, thank you. Anyway, tier list starting right now. First of all, what I want to say is the meta changed a lot from previous patches. Like in Duel J and Duel K, it was mainly meta based on might heroes. Now it's mostly based on magic heroes because of the air elementals coming out and being a chain patch pretty much. So most of these towns will be ranked based on their heroes more than the towns themselves, at least in my opinion. And yeah, also if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Maybe towards the end, after I'm done with it at least. Anyway, nice tiers. Yes. I actually kept the one from Duel K, I think it was when I made the last one. Kept this same template here. However, starting with Castle, I think Castle is basically here, as good as your luck is. Or A tier, let's call it that. This is going to be S tier, right? Main reason why I'm placing Castle here is because it's very weak right now in early fights. You almost always have to go to like week 4, week 5 with Castle. You always have to have Diplo. You always have to find some Angel Diplos. It's not the best town when it comes to early fights, especially if you fight something like Solmir. Broguild is very strong on like week 3, week 4. And Castle excels obviously in late game. If you get to late game, it wins pretty much every time. That's why it's going to be on A tier here. And that's pretty much it. You just have to go for Angels almost every game. You have to go for resources on tier 2, week 2 and week 3. You have to double build Angels, and that's mainly the gameplay for Castle. Main choice here is going to be Adelaide most of the time, sometimes Caitlyn. I do still think that Sorsha is a decent choice. However, because it's a mage meta, obviously Adelaide makes the most sense. She starts with Wisdom only. She can get Airfare right away. So yeah. Why is second best is as good as your luck? Because if you don't have luck with Castle, it's not that good. If you have 0 boxes, if you don't have resource piles and whatnot where they need to be, you might not be able to build Angels, and then you're kind of dead. Next up is Conflux. Conflux I actually think is also A tier. Reason for this is because they probably have the highest tempo in the game right now. Labefa and Anian, depending on your choice, I don't really think they're different. I do think Anian has slightly higher tempo in the first few days because of the double DD. Labefa excels on like week 2, so preference there matters a lot, I guess, but both of them are very good. Factory is included, of course not, it's not out yet. But yeah, you go for Labefa, you go for Anian. They have a lot of Storm Elementals, which are really good in final fights because they can protect. At the same time, they can get one-tapped by chains, so keep that in mind. You do usually have at least like 100 Fire Elementals. That's fairly often met for Conflux right now. You can break on like 1 to 6, even 1 to 5, sometimes even earlier than that. And the main gameplay is basically just get 1-3-1 middle or so and then just kill your opponent. Don't embarrass Kira in front of his YouTube friends. I mean, this will go on YouTube as well, but I'm mainly making it for the stream, so it's fine. I do think it's lower than Castle though, simply because it has no late game potential. Conflux is probably one of the worst towns in terms of late game right now. So keep that in mind. You basically have to fight very early every time. However, in a matchup like this, I would actually favor Conflux here just because they can fight on like week 3 and potentially kill the Castle player very quickly. Next up, it's Cove. I actually believe Cove to be S tier right now. Probably second best town in the game. Reason for that is it's extremely good. Like bird boxes are not very often met, but usually when you don't have bird boxes, you have a lot of sea dogs, you have a lot of pirates. And basically 100 pirates breaks anything, 100 birds breaks anything, right? You do anything in desert as well, almost on 0 losses. You can also do Utopias on that. You can do almost pretty much anything, especially on Eovashus. Is probably by far the best hero in the game right now. The triple clone, especially with middle army, like if you get a huge power stack, right, tier 7, tier 6, you win games on that alone. So Iovashus, one of the strongest heroes, probably why Cove is ranked so high as well. If Dimmer was still in the game, obviously Dungeon would be there instead of here, right? But yeah, I do think Cove is probably one of the strongest towns right now. Very, very good at breaking very early. Also very consistent in their gameplay and so on and on. I thought the best town is the one with Fiona. Not anymore, no. But yeah, Dungeon coming up next. I mean, this is all I'm gonna say here. That's all we have to say here, right? I don't know if it deserves a description anymore. I mean, Dimmer got removed. Dungeon gone places. Dungeon went places. It's fine. Thanks, MPKC. Yeah. I'm a noob. Please elaborate. Basically, Dungeon was one of the strongest towns for like pretty much every Duel version so far, but that was mainly because Dimmer wasn't banned, right? Dimmer is a hero that starts with Meteor Shower. He could clear extremely easily. He could, like, you could break with Dungeon on like 1-to-1 with Vortex pretty much. It was incredibly strong. Dimmer got banned this patch, and Dungeon went from basically S tier to F tier because, yeah, nobody plays it anymore. Everyone bans it in tournaments. Everyone bans it everywhere. And the only hero that you can really play with is Damakon, maybe sometimes like a Lorelei or a Dace, but they're all bad choices. They don't really have a good mage anymore, so yeah. Also, you have very weak late game potential since Black Dragons don't really benefit from Ogre Fist. It's just weak overall. It's probably one of the weakest right now. Now Dungeon is almost an insta minus. Yeah, it's almost banned every single game because nobody wants to play with it. You basically have to high roll boxes like crazy to even stand a chance into the game, while other towns can break a lot easier just because of the heroes they have or just because they get like one box instead of your 10 boxes that you need, right? So Dungeon definitely a lot worse than it used to. Now, this is probably going to be the most controversial one, but as you guys know, I've been playing a lot of Fortress. Definitely, by far, my most favorite town right now in the patch. I do think Fortress is S tier. I do think Broguild is probably second best hero in the game after Iovashus, just because of the Wyvern specialty there. It also gives him +1 speed, which means that you're most likely going to go first in most final fights, especially on week 3, week 4. That basically means that you can fight with like 50 Wyvern Monarchs. You can most of the time even get like a Dispel Orb. Then you just protection from air and you're pretty much immortal. I have something like 95% win rate with Fortress. I barely lost ever and it was mostly to suicides on like week 1. So I do think it's by far the best town right now. My best town as well. And the strategy for this, just double build Wyverns, right? You double build Wyverns, you find some lizard boxes, you even find like a few Serpentfly boxes or something, and you go into Utopia on like 1-7, 1-3-1, then you break as well at the same timing. And you're gonna be perfectly fine in almost every single game. Unless your opponent obviously high rolls greatly. In those cases you pretty much lose with anything though, so it's not like the town is bad, it's more that your opponent just has a lot of good luck there. Inferno, I think it's B tier right now. I don't really see it as good anymore. It used to be S tier just because of demon farming plus might heroes being extremely good in previous patches. Now the boxes got nerfed a fair bit, so usually you have like one Pit Lord box, Pit Fiend box. You don't even have Pit Lord boxes at all. And maybe like 2-3 demon boxes, right? So you get like 100 demons and like 50 Pit Lords at best in most games. But that basically dies to one Chain Lightning. It's very slow. You have like no tempo early on because you don't have a mage hero. You usually go for Marius. I don't think Fiona is a very good choice, honestly. She does start with scouting, she has some tempo, but later on you're gonna regret your choice in a final fight for sure. Because you're playing a mage basically compared to playing Marius with demon specialty. The only real choice that Inferno has right now is to either have like a crazy good biome, very high roll biome to have a lot more boxes than the average, or to demon farm in late game. Both scenarios are very like RNG based, because if your opponent is just gonna go into your biome, you might just die. And on top of that, obviously, if you don't have a super high roll biome at the beginning, you simply cannot fight, right? Plus, you need to find an water tome as well. And that's generally pretty hard to do, especially if your opponent is aggressive. So, I don't think Inferno is very good. It's still better than some towns here. I do think it's still decent, has a chance, right? Like, it's mid-tier, it's okay. If you high roll, you're fine. If not, you're not. That's kind of how it goes. Necro afterwards, I actually think it's probably C tier. It's below Inferno for sure. Necro can still be very good if you find a vamp box. If you don't find a vamp box, you struggle pretty much throughout the entire game. Hero choices, obviously, Vidomina, she doesn't start with anything other than necromancy, so she can roll into earth magic a lot and so on. Pretty good, but overall, you basically either have to find multiple dwellings or you have to find multiple vamp boxes. If you don't, then you basically have no tempo, and the only chance Necro has at winning a game right now is to basically get middle around 1-3-1 timing. If you don't break before 1-3-1 with Necro, you're mostly dead in every game. They have almost no late game. Skelly farming is not really as good, especially because Obelisk and Grail got removed. At least I think so. I haven't seen an Obelisk in a while, so... Since the Grail got removed, obviously you don't have as many Skellies anymore, and also because it's not really a might meta anymore, like Skelly farming doesn't do a lot. Summons obviously might win late game and so on still, so it's not what it used to be. However, as I said, if you find a vamp box, this town goes from here to here, pretty much. It all depends if you find a vamp box or not in time. If you find a vamp box on like 1-3-1 though, it doesn't really matter anymore. It's kind of pointless anyway. Ramparts coming next. And honestly, this one, I'm actually not sure if it's A tier or S tier. Like, it's somewhere here, basically. It's better than Castle, I think. But it's also like almost as good as Cove, right? More or less, if you have a lot of boxes, it's the best town in the world. So technically as good as your luck is, but at the same time, Aeris has a huge advantage there because he has Pegasi speed, which is pretty much faster than anything in the game. So mostly you go first in final fights. Also you get like 200 dwarfs and you're basically fine against chain, so you just chain yourself, right, every turn. Honestly, I feel like I should leave it S tier. I think it's good enough. I think it's consistent enough to be S tier, but you do need to high roll boxes. If you don't high roll boxes as Rampart, it's a struggle still. I do also want to mention that Thorgrim here is a very good choice against heroes like Solmir, maybe Alabefa as well. Thorgrim here is an amazing choice against those two. So yeah. Also the usual strategy, I guess, to break with this town is to basically pick up the box, get a bunch of Grand Elves, and just do a break on force fields. It's actually very strong and very consistent, around like 1-5 to 1-3-1. Very consistent to do that, especially if you're playing Aeris, because Thorgrim cannot do that since he doesn't start with Wisdom. As worse as your luck, actually. Yeah, I guess that's true, because like Rampart is actually very consistent, right? It's pretty consistent usually to high roll a lot of boxes there. What else? We have Stronghold. Stronghold, honestly, what I understand is don't roll dungeon and high roll. Pretty much, yeah. Stronghold right now, I would say, is probably here. There are two choices for Stronghold. One is Shiva, most preferred choice. But Shiva doesn't ever roll Diplo. So you want to take a game late to Stronghold because you can double build birds, you can double build behemoths, but if you don't get Diplo, you can't. And then basically your entire game plan just gets ruined around week 3 and you lose the game. If you get lucky and you get Diplo, you're fine. Most of the time you're winning just because Shiva's very strong. And yeah, obviously she doesn't have water either, so massive disadvantage in sieges there. The second hero choice here is Sorug. Sorug, however, gets Diplo and water a lot, but never gets scouting. So it's a huge gamble to play Stronghold, because you either find nothing in your biome because of no scouting, or you find a lot of things in your biome. You get like all the bird dwellings. You have like a really good, you know, week 2, week 3, and then you don't get Diplo and you lose the game. It's heavily RNG dependent, I think. It's also very RNG dependent based on where your dwellings are. Because if you don't have good behemoth dwellings, you're never going to build into behemoths. If you don't have bird dwellings, you have 0 tempo into the game. So Stronghold's a little bit of a gamble. It can be like the best town in the game, pretty much. If you have like 5 bird dwellings on the road between your bunker town and your main town, you win every single game, because you're going to break on like 70 birds on week 3, right? And there's pretty much no counters to that. You go first with Shiva as well. It's just GG. But if you don't have a lot of dwellings, if you don't really find like a good skill tree, like a good Diplo or something, it's a struggle. So I do think it's pretty low, mid tier, right? It can excel, but it can also be like super bad. And that gets it there. Still better than Inferno? No. I don't think it's better than Inferno, simply because Inferno has demon farming as their potential there. If Inferno gets to demon farm, they win almost every single game, right? If Stronghold gets to have Diplo, they're not going to win every single game. It's still a close battle, right? But I would say that Inferno is still better, so there's that. And then Tower. Honestly, Tower is probably in A tier. I do think Solmer is pretty good. I also think it's stronger than Conflux. Probably weaker than Castle here, just because they have weaker late game. I do think Solmir is by far the best choice right now. I mean, Astral used to be a choice before, right? A lot of people were playing Astral in the past, but I really do think that Tower here is slightly weaker now. Titans aren't really a thing ever, because they're simply too expensive. You have like no early game tempo, so you know, you don't really go Titans ever. However, they do have a strategy right now, which I actually haven't seen a lot of people do. And the strategy is pick golem dwellings. If you pick golem dwellings, especially if they're in a good location, you're gonna have like 300 golems on week 3, okay? There is absolutely no counter to that, and if you have an air tome, you win every single game. It's impossible to fight a Solmir right now with over like 200 golems. If you get to that point, you win every single game. In month 1, I will specify this. In month 2, golems actually don't scale very, very well. First, they don't get elixir. Second, they're not amazing. They're slow units, right? So it's mainly just about that chain fight. If you can win the chain fight on golems, you win the game. If not, then it's kind of whatever. So yeah, I think Tower is probably the strongest town in month 1 right now, honestly. You can win, as I said, a lot of fights in month 1 just because of golems. They also have a lot of Magi boxes. They also have a Genie box, maybe 2 even sometimes. You have the lamps, right? You have Solmir as well. He starts with chain, so you don't even need an air tome if you can just chain lightning if you go first and so on. It's really, really good. I do think that these towns are more consistent though. Tower is not amazing, especially if they don't have a lot of power in biome, because you might break on like 1-3-1. You might have a lot of golems, but your opponent has a lot of counterplay, right? And as I said, Tower is very good week like 3 and 4 to fight, but after that in month 2 they go down a lot. Like Tower month 1 is here, right? Tower month 2 probably here. It's even worse than Dungeon, honestly, especially if you don't build into Titans at all. And as I said, most of the time you don't do it because you want that early tempo. So yeah, I think this is pretty much the tier list. Feel free to ask me any questions if you want. Also about the heroes, about the castles, strategies, anything you think. I hope I didn't leave anything out. Castle is good in hands of good players. Many people pay 4K for it, but they struggle too much. Yeah, that's true as well. Like I said, if you're not able to build angels on week 2, Castle is actually a lot weaker than it is. But if you get those angels on week 2, if you have archangels on week 3, it pretty much wins every game from there. Like if you don't die before 137 as Castle, you're gonna win every game. If you played it well, at least. Did you eat sarmale today? Not yet. Barely ate today, actually. Tower should be F just because of the flashbang. Yeah, tower should be like right there because of the flashbang, to be honest. Wait, no, that was Necro. Whatever. How much does the middle town matter for the tier listing? Middle town, right? I mean, midtown wise, you have to remember that Stronghold and Castle got nerfed a fair bit. They basically have like no tier 7 units. Also, you have to remember that Dungeon and Rampart mids are probably the best right now because you get the Gold Dragon box or you get the Black Dragon box. And then chains don't matter anymore, right? Do a midtown tier list. Yeah, I guess I have time. Yeah, sure, I have time. Save and download, I don't care, reset. Okay, midtown tier list. Let's go. Castle. S tier. 1, because of stables. 2, Archangel boxes are the fastest in the game, other than Phoenixes, but nobody ever builds Phoenixes or deploys them, so it's kind of whatever, right? So basically you just get stabled from the midtown. You get an Archangel box when you go into desert, or even angels. You can build into Archangels and so on. Very strong. Monk boxes, Cav boxes are amazing as well. Also, I will talk about Flabefa versus Anian. I saw the question, don't worry about it. I will try to do this as quick as I can. Conflux mid, it cannot be mid, so F. Like, you have a Conflux in your bunker, it literally cannot be mid. It's not designed like that, I guess, so rip. I guess it's important too, yeah. Then Cove middle. I would say Cove middle is probably not the weakest, but one of the weakest. I would say here, maybe. Simply because, like, they're good, but not really. Most of the time, especially because we get unupgraded and upgraded boxes, you want pretty much everything from Cove, right? So if you get bird boxes, you want all of them. If you get sorceress boxes, you want all of them. If you get Nyx boxes, you want all of them, and so on. And you just don't have space for them, so you're constantly throwing away units. Most of the time when it's Cove middle, you just end up having like 2 Nyx stacks and maybe like 1 sorceress or like 1 Haspid stack, right? And only grabbing like 1 stack from middle. Also, the boxes are not as amazing. They don't really give speed priority. Haspids, they're good, but nobody ever builds them, so they're like super expensive, hard to build. Not the best town. Also, they have like no utility, right? Like, they don't have any magic immune creatures. They don't have any high speed creatures either. It's okay, but not really, as I said, especially compared to others. And also, one thing about Cove, they only have pretty much Nyxes, but to get a good Nyx power stack, you usually have to have a good Diplo as well. So it's heavily dependent on Diplo and having Diplo in the game too. But I think most of the time that it's Cove middle, I've actually seen like super early fights, so it doesn't even come in play. It's just grab 2-3 boxes, push middle, fight your opponent. Mostly how it's gonna go. Dungeon, S tier. I actually think it's probably the best midtown right now as well. 1, because of Vortex. Like, having that Vortex early on gives you insane tempo. Like, finding the dungeon town, obviously, maybe while your opponent doesn't even have it, also gives you insane tempo, obviously, compared to your opponent. Black Dragon boxes pretty much nullify any kind of chain lightning, summons, anything. It's basically just gonna be a mana fight. So whoever has more mana wins on Black Dragons. As long as they don't die, you're fine, right? We saw this yesterday as well. It was basically Black Dragons versus Black Dragons. They were both summoning, they were both chaining. And I still think that Gongwazi won technically because of a bug, because the turns worked weird there, but you know, it's kind of weird. It's a very weird setup right now, but basically you're just gonna try to find a Black Dragon box in the desert. That's your only, like, supreme goal there, right? You find a Black Dragon box, you're gonna be fine. You don't, you're dead. And whoever has more Black Dragons at the end usually wins, right? So, but both players have Dungeon Town, so it evens out. It kinda does, but you also have to remember that you have to go for that town, right? So one player might simply not find it, or they don't pick up the eye and they don't know what middle is, so they never go for that. So Dungeon should be locked here, not S tier. No, but we're talking about like relevance of middle, right? And within the game, I think that having a Black Dragon box basically changes the entire game altogether. So relevance-wise, dungeon middle is extremely important. Castle middle, you can kinda live without, right? Let's be honest, like a stable here plus some archangels are not gonna be as strong as getting a Black Dragon box and winning the game straight up. You know? Or having that vortex and being able to stay in desert for like 5 turns without even going back for mana or things like that. It's a lot stronger, I think, overall. Next up, Fortress. Probably as Cove. It's like good, but not really. I mean, you can get a lot of cows, which I guess kinda win the game, right? But you do have to find a lot of boxes. It's heavily dependent on RNG within desert, and it's not as amazing, I guess. So Fortress, as I said, it's okay, but not amazing, right? Inferno middle I actually think is pretty good. One, because of Freddy Sultan boxes, they give speed priority over almost everything from biomes. Two, because of demon farming potential, right? Like every time there's an Inferno middle, it's almost always gonna be demon farmed as well. Also, they have a very easy path to double building devils, and they're not that expensive either. So devils, very strong units, especially if you double build, especially if you get like 20 dwellings for them. Pretty amazing town to have in middle in terms of army. Not very much utility other than the speed priority though, but I do think it's better than these two towns, and probably more used usually. By that logic, Rampart should be as good with goldies. Yeah, but Rampart doesn't have stable / vortex, that's the thing. Dungeon from F to S. Yeah, but there's a huge difference between starting with dungeon and having mid-dungeon. Huge difference there. Then Necro. I mean, honestly, it's kinda here. But I don't think anything can be worse than Conflux, right? Because Conflux can't literally be middle. So I'm tempted to put it here, but then it's here, you know? I don't know. It's kinda there. Necro has to be F. Yeah, Necro is by far the most hated town to have in middle. They have basically like no good army boxes. You get miss morals constantly. It just overall sucks. Their dwellings are not good. You never build ghosties, right? You don't get elixir for them either. It just sucks. As I said, whatever. It's one of these two. What happened to Black Knights? Did MKC kill them? Yeah, I mean, especially building it in middle, it's just not gonna happen. You have to have way too many dwellings. As I said, they don't get elixir. It's just not happening. I mean, we've seen this yesterday, right? I had a game where I had like 300 demons versus 100 dread knights. The demons won, or 400, I guess it was, something like that. Merry Christmas, Flaps. Anyway, next up, Rampart. I'll actually have it here. It's better than Inferno because of the goldies, speed prior as well. Also, trees are amazing, unicorns are pretty good. I don't really have anything else to say to this town. You just go for a goldie box, you kind of win the game, right? It's the same as dungeon, but without the vortex, basically, so. It does still change the entire game. However, not really, because at the beginning, you don't really have any tempo. Goldie boxes are actually not that easy to find. I think the value for them, someone explained to me yesterday that it was super close to green dragons, and you mostly have green dragon boxes, so you have to build them into goldies. Takes a while. As I said, not really the same tempo as vortex. As a dungeon town does give you, right? So kind of okay. Stronghold afterwards. I don't really know where to put this, to be honest, because the behemoths got nerfed. However, you can still get to a very healthy amount of them, right? So I would say maybe here or here. And the reason for this is because Cyclops are amazing, honestly. Like, Cyclops are actually quite amazing to go for. Especially if you get like 200 of them with a Diplo. If you have archery as well, they're gonna one-tap everything. And they're not that hard to build, to be honest, but you do get a lot of boxes in the desert, and they come in 15s as well, which is huge. Because, like, for instance, a tower, right? They get Naga boxes that are 8 and 10, I think. A lot less overall units than a Stronghold does get with 15 Cyclops every time. And I think I'll actually put Cove here. Just because I really don't see Cove as good as the other two here, so. Tower afterwards, S tier. Titans, double build. Probably one of the strongest strategies in the game. I do think it's worse than a castle town simply because they don't have stables, right? But then again, we're talking about middle here and middle utility. So, as I said, tower S tier, middle towers are extremely strong. You usually never want to have a middle player holding middle for more than like a week or two at best. You have to fight early because simply if they get to the point where they double build Titans with like 10 dwellings, you lose the game. 100%. There's nothing you can do there. Like, you could demon farm like 2,000 demons, you still lose the game every time. I mean, 100 Titans are just gonna completely obliterate everything. Especially with Ogre Fist, there's no counter to them. They cannot get berserked. You can even go with a +3 necklace if you want. It's just way too strong, to be honest. So yeah, there you have it. This is the Midtown tier list as well as the normal tier list. If you have any other questions, I can, I guess, talk about Labefa versus Anian now. I said earlier, Anian has a lot earlier tempo. That is because he gets Expert Air quicker. He gets double DD, then you can get a lot more boxes earlier than Labefa does, right? Meanwhile, if you don't roll into Advanced Turf right away with Anian, you can't really go around your towns. So, what that means is you're gonna go to your main town, you're gonna get that, you're gonna get all the boxes around your main town, and then you're kind of stuck, right? That's why I said that Labefa from week 2 is a lot better, because you have Expert Turf, you can port around the towns, right? You can do everything in your biome on week 2, while Anian can only do stuff around their main town. And that's pretty much it. That's all there is, right? One can port around, do stuff more, like more spread out, while the other one is a lot more set up into doing stuff around the midtown there in biome. And I think that's the whole choice. Like, I simply think Anian is better week 1, Labefa is better week 2. But overall, I think the tempo does even out around week 3, because especially with Magic University, you're gonna have Expert Earth, Expert Air on both of them by 1-to-1 most games. Do you think there is any unexplored strategies that could push a faction up the tier list? I don't really know if there's many unexplored strategies as long as summons are in the game, to be honest. Like, as long as summons and chains are in the game, there's really not much else you can do in final fights, right? So it's not like you have much of a choice in hero choosing, in like town choosing, and what your strategy is going to be about the game. Right now everyone just wants an air tome, air orb, power, attacks. That's how 99% of the games go. If you do anything outside of that, you're going to lose the game because summons are too strong, right? It's magic kebabbing. It's just how it is. It's the same as I version, by the way. I used to rush people with Deemer or with Solmir or with whatever on like 1-3-1 just with like 30 power and summons, and there was no counter to it whatsoever, ever. It's extremely strong, and yeah, I don't really see other strategies coming up, at least not until the next patch, I think. Can we have a short duel tier list? Probably not. It would take too long, and I have like 5 minutes left. Can you say something about how much to spend on towns? How much would you spend on towns? I mean, in terms of spending on towns, I guess Cove, Castle, Fortress, Tower. Probably the towns you're mainly gonna bet up to like 4k, 5k here, depending what you're gonna fight. Obviously, if they fight each other, it's like 2-3k bets mostly. Conflux, then I guess Rampart can maybe go up to like 3-4k. Then I would say Inferno and Necro and Stronghold and Dungeon. I feel like you start here at like 1k bets and then you go 2, 3, 4k basically. In my opinion, at least. I don't think trades are very relevant right now, by the way. You just want to trade up to like 4 or 5k max so you can get the gold mine Diplo. In that case, any of these towns are equal to each other, really. So trades are really not as relevant. You mainly trade for preference these days. Like, for instance, I am trading for Inferno over all the other ones, mostly. Just because I think... not Inferno, sorry, Fortress. Just because I think Fortress is going to be way stronger in those games. So, you know, while other people in a matchup like this, for instance, might bet for Castle, I'm going to bet for Fortress every time. That's why I'm saying it's basically preference bets here. Going up to like 2-3k just for the town you have higher win rate on. Rank these heroes: Damakon, Lorelei, Caitlyn, Adelaide, Solmir, Torgrim, Iris, Marius, Naimos, Yovashis, Brogilt, Vidomina, Shiva, Krelion, and Ayen in Labeth. Nah, you can't really rank those though. How would you? I mean, it's different towns, it's different playstyles. It depends a lot on boxes, it depends a lot on playstyles, everything. When empty outcast tier list, next version. Is tower better than Rampart, really? Yes, I think so. I mean, I don't know where I placed them, but I think they were close each other. But I do think the tower is better than Rampart a little bit. Just because Solmir is a lot more consistent into breaking like 1-6 to 1-3-1. Is a new empty outcast